All right, Ben, you put this Pearls versus Turds candidate on the agenda, so I'm going to let you talk about it. Pearls versus Turds is the segment of the show where we take a bit of wisdom with scare quotes from the internet
Yeah,
and we decide whether it's actually good advice or a turd. Why don't you take it away?
sure. Well, just to give you a little background here, in life, sometimes you hear how bad something might be, but
Yep.
it's kind of hard to believe until you actually see it yourself, and then you're like, "Holy cow, it's actually worse than what I thought." I mean, in other cases, right, you hear how bad someone might be or something might be, and then you go see it yourself. You're like, "This ain't that bad."
Yep.
But anyways, I know we've said a lot of bad things about Khan Academy's LSAT preparation course, but just the other day I was checking it out to see which tests they had in there and so forth. And I saw this lesson that said how to approach ordering setups. So this is one of their logic games lessons. It's actually one of the very first lessons that they give people. And I clicked through it and I was kind of like, what the heck is going on here? So um, we see that they're giving us a rule, and the rule that they give us, this is an ordering rule. It says if A presents on Thursday, then B presents earlier than F. Which, by the way, side note here, this is so outdated in the sense that no games since like the third or fourth LSAT have used the letters A, B, C, D, or E
That's a
as
good
one of the
point. Yeah,
variables.
I didn't even notice that, but because they use A through E for their answer choices, I guess
Yeah.
they no
Yeah.
longer ever use A through E as their variables. Not that that's like
That doesn't, yeah, it doesn't
it
have any
shouldn't.
substantive meaning, but it's still, I mean, LSAC stopped doing that, right?
Yeah.
Precisely because it's confusing. So,
Well, he goes on here. I mean, and I'm not. I don't think I heard Sal Khan, by the way, on a podcast recently. I've been listening to this "People I
mhm,
Mostly Admire" podcast, which is by
okay.
one of the Freakonomics guys. I always get the two Freakonomics guys confused,
Hmm,
but I
okay.
really like all their podcasts, including Freakonomics. And so he interviewed Sal Khan, and the guy, he sounds like a very genuine, super smart guy who wants to transform all of education, and more power to him, but they're not good at LSAT. This is the problem. And he's giving, like, all he's really doing here, it looks like to me, is regurgitating Kaplan advice from 30 years ago.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. I might even speculate that in some cases this is a little bit worse. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at Kaplan in a while, but yeah, I suspect it's just the challenge of taking on so much, right? Whoever was in charge of this just didn't know what they were talking about, even if Khan himself has got a great mission and a great goal.
I have to double check my own vocabulary here, but I believe that they might accuse him of dilettantism, or being a dilettante, which is, as I understand it, it's basically like it's kind of like jack of all trades, master of none.
Mm, mm,
Just
yeah.
being a smart guy and thinking that you can figure anything out. And then
Hmm.
he's actually presenting damaging advice. And to be fair, I used to give this same advice when I was a brand new rookie LSAT teacher with no training. I would have done something similar to this, but 15 years of LSAT teaching later, I've got a much better perspective on how to explain this stuff. And this is
Yeah.
just, I mean, if you just like look at this image,
Yeah.
it's like designed to confuse. I mean, it's like there's such a simpler way
I know. That's what I was
to
like,
get
wait,
to the
what
same
is
thing.
this? What is
Yeah.
happening here? But by the way, I'm stealing from Sam Harris here, but he's, and I've mentioned this before, but you just hit something I think that is so true.
Yeah.
You said that he's giving damaging, or Khan's course,
Yeah.
whoever wrote it is giving damaging advice here. And Sam's at the beginning of his book, Waking Up, I think he talks about how in the world you can have um, no knowledge of a subject. You can have good knowledge, like not very much, but good knowledge of a subject. You can be learning about something correctly, and then you can be learning about something incorrectly. And he's
Yeah.
like, you're not, it's not just like you don't know anything and then you start learning good things and now you start progressing. You could actually be introduced bad information, and that is going to push you further away from your goal. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. So they give you, they give us or whoever is looking at this lesson several logic game rules from an ordering game that they've made up. And this one rule in particular just like kind of made me shake my head. It says if A presents on Thursday, then B presents earlier than F. It's a conditional statement. It's an if-then statement, but it is an ordering rule. It's saying, hey, look, if A ends up being on Thursday, then make sure that B comes before F. And then what they wrote here is they literally wrote the word if. This is how they're diagramming this rule.
Yeah.
And then they wrote A equals sign THU. So abbreviated Thursday, arrow, and then B before F. I mean, there's so many problems with this. First of all, if I were to actually even write this rule, I would just put A into Thursday. I wouldn't write if A equals Thursday. And then I might have an arrow, and then I would have an arrow going to B before F. But that's kind of old school. That was better, but old school. These days, we could totally just do worlds, right? You could say, okay, let's create a world where A is on Thursday, and let's create a world where A is not on Thursday, and then we don't have any if-then stuff, and we can just start writing this. Yeah.
For people who are watching this on YouTube, do you mind, Ben, if I use my whiteboard behind me?
No, go right ahead. Yes, please.
I'm going to write down what Khan wrote, and then I'm going to write down what we today would write. This is going to be one difficulty here is that I'm going to have to take off my earbuds in order to be able to reach my whiteboard.
Sure.
Because I'm not using AirPods like you are, because you're fancy. But let me just, I'm going to do this on the whiteboard, and you can narrate as I do it. Yeah, how's that sound?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good. Yeah. Nathan approaches the whiteboard. I was trying to be a poetic narrator, emphatic narrator. Anyways, okay, good. Nice work, Nathan. He's writing if, literally the word if, A equals Thursday, then arrow, B before F. That is what Khan wrote. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. And then, oh yeah, Khan went on to write the contrapositive in the same form, writing out the word literally if, if F is before B, then A cannot be on Thursday. That is the correct contrapositive. If A is on Thursday, then B has to be before F. So if F is before B, then of course A cannot be on Thursday. But it's just, what is it? It's like a diagram salad. It's a mix of just letters thrown together on the page. Okay, so now Nathan is drawing what we would draw today, which is 10 times simpler. He has two diagrams, one in which A is literally put on Thursday, and another in which A is not on Thursday. Cool. Welcome back, Nathan.
Did I do anything, any feedback on what I did? I mean, I used less whiteboard ink in my version. Even though I made two worlds, I still wrote down less than they did.
Yeah, that's crazy. Sorry,
it's a start on making two worlds, which we like to do anyway, because we know that worlds kill games.
Yeah.
So I don't have to ever think about this rule ever again. I have a world where A's Thursday, and in that world, I wrote down B before F.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have another world where A is not Thursday, in which case the rule doesn't apply. So I don't have to think about any contrapositive. The problem with that top approach, which to be honest, I think you used to do that, and I used to do that 10 years ago.
Yep.
But there's just such a simpler, better, I was susceptible to that LSAT dogma.
Yeah.
Because it's like I looked at a book or something, I probably got it from the Power Score Bibles. And I just kind of did. And I think they got it from Kaplan or Princeton or whatever. And it's just like you go into LSAT teacher mode and you think you're supposed to be writing down conditionals. Like we used to have these whole long ass lessons about conditionals and contrapositives and everything. And these days, I don't say the word contrapositive
Mm-hmm.
hardly ever. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't use that conditional arrow. And I
Yeah.
just go to work on a solution using worlds instead of having that rule, which is messier than the original rule on the page.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I just wanted to clarify that in your two worlds, basically what you did instead of writing the if then statement, I was narrating this, but I think I may have left this out. Um, you just wrote the 5 days, the 5 dashes, one for each day, and then put A in on Thursday. And that's what we mean by putting it on Thursday. And then in your next world, you put 5 dashes, one for each day, Monday through Friday. And then you just put a cross below Thursday saying A can't go there. Um, I'm just trying
It's
to
just,
imagine what it's like to hear. But anyways,
yeah,
yeah.
to be clear, when you have a conditional rule, if you have an if then rule, if the sufficient condition is true, if the if clause, if that is triggered, if
Yep.
that's true, then you have to worry about the other thing, the then. If the if
Yep.
happens, then the then has to happen. If the
Yeah.
if doesn't happen, then I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
The rule doesn't apply anymore.
You can forget about it. It's over. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it's just like a better, it's just easier. It's simpler.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just can't imagine. I mean, I just can't imagine doing it any other way these days.
No, I agree. It's actually pretty consistent with a lot of scientific discoveries, right? Like a lot of times, scientists will come up with theories and they'll say, okay, well, if this happens and this is the rule, and if this happens and this is the rule, and then, oh, by the way, if this other thing happens and this is the rule, and then somebody comes along and is like, wait a sec, there's an underlying like rule here that would actually explain all of these scenarios. And they lay it out, and you're like, oh, that's it. That's all. That's the rule. It was just that our other rules were incomplete and not, so they only worked in a small set of scenarios. It's like here, yes, it's true. The contrapositive is true. It's something that must be true if
But
the original one is true, but it's just not like
it has the
people think that.
opposite. Teaching it this way, Ben, has
Yeah.
the opposite of the intended effect. Since I stopped writing out conditionals and writing out contrapositives,
Yeah.
I've noticed far fewer people confusing sufficient for necessary in the logic games in my classes.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Khan's idea. Khan makes it look like it's two separate rules,
Mm-hmm.
right? Khan's like, well, if A is Thursday, then this happens. But
Yeah.
if F's before B, then this happens.
Yep.
Which is like, whoa, what? There was only one rule. Now there's two rules.
Yeah.
And and in my version, there's no rules. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two
Yeah.
worlds. There's a world where A is Thursday, and then there you get B before F. Then there's a world
Yep.
where A is just not Thursday, and that's it. There's no other
Yeah.
rule, and you're done. And you don't have the opportunity to confuse sufficient for necessary, right? Like
Yep.
even the if you take that approach on the top, people are going to be like, well, but okay, I mean, I understand, which always means they don't understand. I understand, but
Yeah.
what about when F is before B? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, then you're not in that world.
Yeah.
That's the B before F world. in
Yeah.
in the other world, yeah, F can be before B. Sure, there's no rules down there other than
Yeah.
A can't go Thursday.
Yep. So if you find
But
out or decide that F has to come before B, you have to go into that world and you're fine now.
it's
It's all
even
taken care of.
better. It's even better, Ben, than this makes it look, because this almost guaranteed would connect to other rules. It would trigger other rules.
Yep.
And
Sure.
so you'd be able to make more steps either on the top or the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
or
Absolutely.
both.
Yep.
And so you're like, not only does it eliminate a nasty rule, which this is an admittedly nasty rule for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's got conditional and a sequencing thing in it. It's
Together.
tough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so the world's approach, not only does that get rid of that rule, but it also gives you a head start on worlds, which is a thing that you want to do on like 3/4 of all logic games anyway.
Totally. Yeah, and also just the added confusion. I mean, look at this. They give us this rule, they draw it out, then they give us the deduction or the contrapositive or whatever you want to call it. So now you have two rules that you've written down, which, like you said, is more than what you've written down.
They've
And
got 4 bullets here of
they got 4
deductions.
bullets. That's what I'm saying. And if you're a student, you're like, oh shit, I got to remember all this. And you do,
Wow.
because if you don't,
That
if
was a
you make,
lot.
there's so many opportunities for mistakes here, which we've seen thousands of times. So for example, the first one, it says, it's important to remember that conditional rules also have logically equivalent rules built into them. This is the contrapositive. If B doesn't present earlier than F, then A doesn't present on Thursday. Okay, people are going to make mistakes there.
Well,
When
it's
they put the
logically
contrapositive.
correct, but it's hard for people to understand. What that approach does is it takes one conditional and it turns it into 2 conditionals.
Yep.
My approach is, let's take one conditional and turn it into
turn it
0
into zero.
conditionals.
Yeah, let's get rid of conditionals.
Yeah,
which are just
right.
just like processing time, right? Every time you encounter a question, you've got to now process that if-then statement. You're like, okay, well, does the condition apply? Okay, if it does, then what's the then clause? What's happening? Anyways,
I feel you, LSAT teachers of the world. If you ever run across this segment of the podcast, I feel you, but you got to let go of this idea that you need to write out the rule and then write out the contrapositive of the rule, because all you're doing, I know you understand it. I understand it too. So does Ben. So does Sal Khan. And we all understand it, but your student doesn't. And so when you write the rule and then you write the contrapositive, you can see the people in the room getting like, whoa, what is going on here? When you do this, you go, hey, when A is Thursday, B has to be before F. When A is not Thursday, the rule poof disappears. Isn't that nice? And they go, oh yeah, oh, okay. Because it's actually not that bad. We make it look bad by our overly heavy-handed LSAT teacher mode.
yeah.
You want to go through the rest of these bullets?
Yeah, really quick, just to show the errors that
Sure.
people can run into when they're trying to do all this. So the next bullet point, they're telling you to remember, since there can't be 2 presenters on the same day, saying that B doesn't present earlier than F is exactly the same as saying that F presents earlier than B.
Yeah, that's true.
But people mess this up too. They're like starting to do it, and then they they cross it out, and then you're like, oh shoot, and I don't know.
You don't have to think about that. That's I used to do exactly all this, but it's just worthless, because what you're doing is you're like, look how long it takes to explain this approach.
Yep.
Whereas this approach, with the world's just, you don't have to go into I got no bullet points.
Yep. No bullet points.
Instead of 4 bullet points. Yeah. All right. What else we got?
So, okay. The third bullet point says it's crucial to be aware that we can't deduce anything if A doesn't present on Thursday. That's true. And that is something that people need to understand even when they create their worlds. But it's pretty easy to understand. I don't know.
Well, once people get the worlds thing down, it's like, I'm in this world or I'm in this world, which, by the way, what are worlds? Worlds are just possible solutions, like all of
total
the
number of
possible solutions for the game, right? Not that you have to detail out every one of them. It's more like a fork in the road, right?
Yep.
The dividing
100%.
line here is like, well, there's the set of solutions where A is Thursday, and then there's the set of solutions where A is not Thursday. We can all agree that A is either Thursday or not Thursday. Okay, so when A is Thursday, B before F. When A is not Thursday, don't care about B and F.
Yep.
That's the end of the explanation. I mean, it's simple. You just go down that fork or you go down that fork, and it solves all these problems.
Solves all these problems, and it's visual, right? People, you got people out there who say they're not visual learners, but the vast majority of people are visual learners. And when you see this, you're like, look, here's this situation, and here's this situation, as opposed to this logically concocted, like basically math, right? It looks like it's basically like math. So you either want to write math formulas on your paper, or do you want to actually write down what's going to happen?
Yeah, because the fourth bullet point, go ahead here.
Yeah, so drum roll, it says, so conclusion coming, underneath the original rule, you should note the equivalent rule. No, you should not. So this is not only not a pearl, it's a turd. You know what? Maybe that's why we have those ties. because in the world you have information that helps you, you have no information or neutral information, and then you have information that hurts you. And this is information that hurts you. It's going to push you in the wrong direction.
I'm going to update the scoreboard. We are now at 13 pearls, 45 turds, and 22 ties. This is not a tie. This is actually a turd. And I'm, again, it's something that I used to do. It's something that Ben used to do. If you see videos of me from 10 years ago, I'll be doing similar stuff. But experience helps. Like I still learn stuff about how to teach the LSAT, and that's not the way to do it.
So there's a couple more takeaways here. I want to read one of them at least. I don't know if there are any here that you want to talk about, but I thought this was a turd. And so it's, again, another piece of advice
Double
that
turd.
A lot of people, a lot of people are getting because they're taking the con class. It's free. And this is one of the first lessons. This is, if not the first lesson. So it says, don't skimp on deductions, exclamation point. Every time you have an A before B rule, in other words, if it says A comes before B, you can make quick deductions as to where A and B can't go.
Oh, the old not rules thing. Yeah.
Yes. Take the time to do so because points come from deductions, exclamation point.
Not really.
Okay. So this is something that's, again, I think kind of LSAT dogma. If you know that A comes before B, then you know A can't be last, right? Because obviously it comes before B. So then, like Power Score and these other books say, go ahead and write not A under the last slot. But for me, like, adding too much information that's not moving the ball forward, like if I just note that A comes before B below my diagram, or I create worlds, then I can just see that. I'm never going to put A last because right below my diagram, I have this little drawing that shows A coming before B. And although adding that not A to the very end is true, to me, when I see tons of not rules, all of a sudden it's like the important information is being, driven out because there's so much information written on the board. I'd much rather know where A has to go as opposed to where it can't go.
I didn't bother in my worlds. I could have written in the world where A is Thursday and B has to be before F.
Yep.
I could have written F can't go on Monday and B can't go on Friday. Yep. But those are kind of visually obvious.
They're obvious. And you're actually hiding that by adding that information. Now you have to
because you're just you're just muddying it up with a whole bunch of extra shit. And unless this is an exceptionally easy game, they're never going to ask you which one of the following can't go on Friday, and the answer is F can't go for,
and you would see that right away anyways, right? You're like, well, look, there's that rule. Like I can't put F first. So
right. Yeah. Sorry. F can't go Monday. Yeah. Okay. Well, what other dumb tips are here?
Let's see here.
How about this one? Practice hard. Since you will see an ordering setup on test day, odds are good.
Yeah, odds are good. But I think I was just looking at a test from the 70s the other day, and it didn't have any ordering games.
Oh no, I've seen recent. Yeah, there's recent tests that don't have any ordering. So this is, by the way, we should say that this is not just Khan. And I mean, I'm definitely not attacking Khan Academy generally. I just don't think they're doing a very good job of helping people on the LSAT. Yeah. And it's not just Khan because it's actually the Law School Admission Council partnering with Khan to put out bad advice. In fact, that's just literally false. You will see an ordering setup on test day. No, you won't. Not necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, I will grant them that it's a very high probability, right?
But not 100%. And Ben, their test, their own fucking test is so literal. Like that would be a flaw. Well, most tests include an ordering game. Therefore, your test, you will see an ordering setup on test day. That is logically invalid. And it's a test of logic. So, okay. So there's another thing that they need to clean up. But then I wanted to also shit on this point. Since you will see an ordering setup on test day, you can practice what you've learned in this article until it becomes second nature. But most ordering games don't have conditional rules in them.
Yeah.
So even if you were at a very basic level and you're trying to get good at ordering games, you don't want to be practicing this lesson until it becomes second
No.
nature.
Yeah, the combination of a conditional statement and an ordering rule is very rare. Those are the harder ordering games, and they're not very common. This is bizarre. I also just, now that we're like shitting all over this, I can't the formatting and the 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 capitalization, and
A
I
lot of
don't know.
italics, a lot of bolds.
Bold,
Yeah.
it's annoying. I'm trying to ignore
It's
it because
how
it's
I
not
write.
substantive.
It's how I write before you edit my shit. Like, you know, and I've like now
Calm
trained
down.
myself not to do it. Every time
Yeah.
I go for the control I, I'm like, nope, Ben's gonna not let me do this. And thankfully, I've got Abigail also helping me out now on my newsletters and stuff. I just don't even do it anymore. Just like, nah, we don't need
Yeah.
don't need that. All right. I mean, they, hey, they have the best of intentions, I'm sure. Making LSAT prep available to people who can't afford fancy LSAT prep. I mean, it's actually a core mission of what we do at LSAT Demon. I just think the Demon free is way, way better than anything that Khan has given out. Like, we're at least not dispensing 50% bad advice along with our good advice.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, take a look at this last one. It starts out good. I was like, oh, well, maybe we could give this one a pearl. It says trial and error sketching, where you're basically testing each answer choice, is not time efficient. I totally agree with that.
tend to agree. Yeah.
And then it says, make sure to draw a new diagram for each new question. Okay. That's, again, it's
Yeah.
like you started to go good, and then you're like, wait, you don't know anything about worlds. So oops.
Right.
Because if you do worlds, you don't need to do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Worlds just totally obviates the new diagrams. I
Mm-hmm.
would say on like 50% of all logic games, once I'm done with my setup, I make a big show out of it in class because I'm a smart ass, like put the cap back on the pin.
You're like,
Like,
oh yeah, I don't
I'm
need to do any
done.
more drawing. Yeah.
I'm not drawing shit. I'm going to answer all these questions in about 45 seconds because my
Yeah.
worlds have completely destroyed this game. I guarantee that if you wrote the rule and the contrapositive and then started going into the questions, you're going to be doing a hell of a lot more work. This approach up here leads to more work, not less. The world's approach on the bottom, it would get the ball rolling to where you're just going to basically solve the game. And then, um, yeah,
But
that's
Nathan, you
it.
took 6 minutes to set up those worlds.
Right. Yes. And then my total elapsed time on the game was 6 minutes and 45 seconds because I just breezed through all the questions were obvious by the time I was done with my worlds. I mean,
Yeah. And everyone else took 14 minutes on that game and didn't
right.
finish the last game. So
Right. Also, I wouldn't have known that it took me 6 minutes to make the worlds because I'm just not managing the time.